And now, everyone, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to your host, Jay Bunner.
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Good, good. I want to welcome everybody here on campus and also those that are watching out on cyberspace. And my name is Jay Bunner. I'm the program director of the Cloud Technologies program here at Full Sail University. And it's my great pleasure to ask you to put your hands together and welcome our speakers for today's events, Mr. Ian Meyer and Mr. Jack Norman.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you, Full Sail. Thank you for having us. Hall of Fame week. All right, great. So what we are going to talk about today is online privacy. And before we even get started doing any further introductions, there's something we need to talk about. And do we have the slides up here for the people in the audience? No? Audience?
Possibly.
Possible? Anyway, I can read these. There we go. Hey, everyone. Excellent. So, first thing we need to talk about before we continue. We are not lawyers.
No.
We are not your lawyers. That is the more important part. Not your lawyers. None of the presented or provided content constitutes legal advice. This is really the prayer of the information security professional. This is general security and privacy advice from security and privacy advocates. Consult a lawyer before making your decisions. We make this point a little later in the talk, but if you think you need a lawyer, you probably do. Run with that. So, a little bit about us. So again, my name is Ian Meyer. I'm a security professional working with Fortune 500 companies, focused on compliance and risk management currently. I speak at B-Sides, which is a series of local security conferences to help the security community. I'm a Tripwire guest blogger for the State of Security blog. Course director here at Full Sail University. Everybody Full Sail? Yeah? All right. Yes. I'm a security mentor, privacy advocate, and when I'm not up on stage talking to people about security, I'm probably picking locks, making something with a 3D printer, or writing lots of words.
I'm Jack Norman. I have gone to school a lot. I had the good fortune of having an employer that kept paying for school, and I always said if they'd keep paying, I'd keep going. So I've knocked out a couple master's degrees. I got a BS in engineering. I'm a board member of our local OWASP chapter. That is the Open Web Application Security Project. I do a lot in the AppSec hacking of application space. I'm also a senior information security engineer at HD Supply, a Fortune 500 company here in Orlando, as well as a course director here at Full Sail. And I'm also a privacy advocate. When I am not doing all of that stuff, I am usually outside, either shooting guns, running, swinging a hammer, building something, or just about anything else that does not involve a computer. So.
Excellent. So how did we get here today? Privacy is a right. And as the online world changes, as your lives, my life, everyone's life becomes more integrated online, there's an entire world that's looking at you, that's watching you. Political changes, nation states, etc., have a lot of people worried, concerned. How much do people know about me? What can they tell about me? So, a few months ago, some friends, Jack and a few others who aren't here today, started to put together a curriculum called Fourth Amendment as a Service, where we wanted to go out and teach people like you, people listening on the internet, a little bit about privacy and security. There's a lot of people that feel like maybe they're a marginalized group, that they may be targeted for who they love, how they worship, what they like. What we want to do is give you some tools, some context, some understanding about what's out there, how data is gathered, and some of the things you can do to protect yourself just to keep you from being the lowest hanging fruit, to be a target if someone wants to come after you, whether it's stalking, whether it be any number of issues where you might want your private life to remain private. So who are some of these marginalized groups I'm talking about? Protesters. We have a right to protest in this country. We have a right to air our grievances. However, people are worried, well, will I then be targeted for my political views? Genders. Now, in all reality, what I mean is women. I really do. There's often times where women are targeted, cyber stalking. There's a lot of things going on where they might feel that they need to have a greater level of privacy. Now, does that mean that men aren't also subject to this? Absolutely. But you can potentially be targeted based on your gender. People of color. I believe in a country where your skin tone does not matter. And what you do and say online should be private. It should be protected. You should not have to worry about having a conversation about how you feel about your situation online. So LGBTQ, I already said it. You should not have to worry about who you choose to love in this country. We have privacy protections. Foreigners, people coming from outside the country. This is a major issue in current affairs and debate right now. If you're here, you should feel safe. You should be able to feel like if you are a citizen operating legally in this country, that you should not be targeted. Religious affiliation, how you choose to worship. And that's not just religions that are non-Christian, that's Christian as well. You should not be targeted based on how it is that you worship. And then, of course, dissenting political voices, which bring us back to the protesting, right? You should be able to air your grievances. You should be able to have a conversation with people without worrying, are you being watched? Are you being listened to? Will you be targeted based on your political thoughts and feelings? So what are we going to talk about today? Your right to privacy, secure communications, protecting yourself online, online privacy and privacy tools, things we will not cover, and this is probably more important than the things we will cover. Illegal or unethical use. I'm about to say something I'm very serious, and that means you too at home, viewing on your MacBooks as well. If you're here listening to figure out how to hide illegal activities, log off, get out of the room. That's not what this is about. Law enforcement has a hard enough time as it is, protecting us from threats known and unknown. However, that has to be a balance between our right to privacy. Well, our right to have our own thoughts and our own opinions and not be targeted. We won't go into in-depth discussions of technology. We're going to actually talk about some tools. We're not going to get into how the crypto works, etc. We want to give you the tools and capabilities so you can work on this stuff on your own. In-depth state and local law, we won't get into that. Again, refer to, we are not lawyers, not your lawyers. And we're not going to talk about legality as applies to your specific situation. So when we get to the Q&A portion, if you've got a question about your brother's uncle's dog who bought a car in this state and it had something in it, we're not your people. We can't help you. Refer again back to, if you think you need to talk to a lawyer, go talk to a lawyer. Attorney-client privilege is a wonderful thing. So we will, of course, have a Q&A at the end. Hopefully, we'll have at least 5 minutes. It sounds like we'll probably have a little bit more to talk about any questions you guys have about the content, refer you to different resources, etc. So let's talk about your right to privacy. This is a great question, right? People say, why should I care? I have nothing to hide. I go online, I look at cat videos. That's all I do. That's cool, right? That's fine. Hey, cat videos are awesome. But this is a quote from William O. Douglas. He was a U.S. Supreme Court Justice. He was born in 1898. That's a long time ago. But he was born in 1898, right? And he has a quote here. Big Brother, in the form of an increasingly powerful government and an increasingly powerful private sector, will pile the records high with reasons why privacy should give way to national security, to law and order, to efficiency of operation of scientific advancement and the like. This gentleman died before the internet was a commercial entity. Imagine what he would have to say today about the data we gather online, about how we communicate online, etc. It was so important that our founding fathers enshrined privacy in the documents that formed this country. So this is the Fourth Amendment. This is really what it's all about, right? The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. And I'm going to stop there because really that's the heart of it. You guys can read this as well as I can read it. But basically that's the heart of it. You have a Fourth Amendment right to privacy, to be able to communicate, to share your feelings without feeling like you're being monitored or watched. So basically you have to remember this. Rights are rights for a reason. They're not privileges when it's convenient. They're not something that gets taken away just because the political winds have shifted. They're not something that gets taken away because of an event. These are rights so important they've standed the test of time through this country. So how does the Fourth Amendment really protect you, right? Unreasonable searches and seizures, arbitrary arrests, search warrants, stop and frisk, and safety inspections to make sure everything's okay. And wiretaps. Wiretaps is really what we're talking about today, because this is all about online privacy. And this just gives you some background and context as to what we're talking about when we get into how your data is collected, how it's used, and how you can protect yourself. You are protected legally against wiretaps without going through the proper legal channels. Now, since I said that way, do you think there's ways around the legal channels? Everyone raise their hand? Yes? I'm telling everyone to raise their hand for the folks at home. They're raising their hands. So, you're protected against these things. There are also some other amendments that help protect your privacy. So, the first, freedoms. Freedom to assemble, freedom of speech. Self-incrimination, the Fifth Amendment. That has a lot to do with the password debate right now. Unlocking iPhones. If I have to give you my password, am I incriminating myself? I don't know. It's up for debate, especially here in Florida. 14th, equal protections. Basically, personal autonomy, being able to function on your own as a free person. So that's really the past, though, right? We feel that those things, they're written in our Bill of Rights. We shouldn't really have to worry about them. And yet we kind of do. So Apple on privacy and encryption. Now, we had some pictures in here, but as it's a privacy talk, they are redacted. I'm sorry. It's national security reasons. But this is a quote from Tim Cook. Everyone should probably know who Tim Cook is, but Tim Cook's the CEO of Apple. He says they're gobbling up everything they can, everything they can learn about you, trying to monetize it. We think that's wrong. That's what's happening today. Whether you realize it or not, you go to Amazon, you go to some website, and you go to click on something, and you show up on another page, and suddenly whatever you're looking for is on that other page. That's strange. That's all data that they're monetizing. They're trying to figure out everything they can about you to figure out when you'll buy, what you'll do, how you'll purchase, where you'll purchase, anything they can figure out. This data, though, can be used by anyone. Anyone who wants to buy into it. Because every time you click that end user license agreement, you say, yeah, I want this. I want this free product. It's great because it's free. It's Facebook, it's Twitter, it's all these free services. And isn't free wonderful? If it's free, you are the product. Your data, your information, what you say and do online, how you behave, this is what is being monetized. Now you might think to yourself, well, that's not a big deal. That's okay. I don't mind. That's a good trade-off. Well, the problem is that data doesn't always get used by people trying to help you. And it leads into whole treasure troves of data online that leave us kind of stuck with what we have. And what we have is big data. A lot of you may have heard the term big data and be kind of confused about it, because in all reality, big data is a whole bunch of little small pieces of data in vast quantities. And I try to do kind of a Venn diagram to explain this, right? So if you had 3 pieces of data, things you looked at, like your history, searches, etc., where you were, GPS, photo analysis of locations, and things you like, social media likes, etc. Those 3 pieces of information can be put together pretty quickly to say, yeah, you were you, and create a unique identifier that then tracks you. They might not know that Ian is Ian, but they know somebody that has clicked on all these things is related. They are very likely the same person. And then sooner or later, they'll find a social media profile and say, oh, yeah, now we know everything Ian likes. We know everything he likes to buy. We know when he likes to shop. We know when he likes to sleep. So that link down there, follower me. If you go to that, I'm not suggesting you do it now, but at some point, enter in your Twitter handle if you have one. It's Twitter analytics. They know when you sleep because you're not posting. And they can actually tell, oh, he goes to bed around midnight and wakes up around 7 because he's not doing anything with his profile. Do you want people knowing when you sleep? I don't. I don't get enough sleep. I don't want people knowing I'm not sleeping. So here's the thing. Forget the big data correlation. Forget the billions of data points beyond just the 3 that I correlated quickly. We can identify 87% of the population based on just your gender, date of birth, and zip code. If I have those 3 pieces of information, I can likely narrow down information online to anyone in this audience, to anybody watching online, within 87%. That's crazy. That's 3 bits of data. Most of it available online. So advertising networks, what are they doing with all this data? 97% of you can be identified just by your browser. Whenever you open up Chrome or Firefox or IE for reasons, you open those up. You can be identified. That browser has done many things. And sooner or later, that can get tied to social media, that can get tied to login accounts, etc., and have a full, complete profile of how you live your life online. This information is shared, it's sold, and it's auctioned. One company may know everything you like to buy. Another company might know where you like to go because you use a GPS navigation app. Another company might know what movies you like, and they pair all this together. And they use big data analytics, and they use algorithms to figure out what you're doing. Well, how do they trade that data? They trade it by selling it. And you've agreed to it. If you go through those end user license agreements when you get all those free products, you've agreed to sharing this data. How do you think that affects your Fourth Amendment rights? You've agreed to share this data. Law enforcement can then use that. They can buy into these networks the same way advertisers do. They don't need a warrant. You've offered it freely. So all of this comes down to a point. Target determined a 16-year-old was pregnant before the family knew based off of search queries. Target knows so much about you as a shopper. They were able to predict a 16-year-old girl was pregnant before her father knew about it. It's a fascinating story where he showed up incredibly upset. Why are you sending all this baby coupons and whatnot? My daughter is 16 years old. Yeah, she was pregnant. And Target knew before the father did. They knew it by using big data analytics. Another very interesting one, 4chan. Many of you might be familiar with 4chan, but it's an online forum. Basically, they used online investigative techniques looking at what's called metadata analysis, data about data. They were looking at social media photos, they were looking at posts online, they were looking at pictures, and they were able to figure out where ISIS fighters were. They then worked with military aides and sources to give them this information. Not much after a drone strike occurred, taking out that site. I think we can all agree that that's probably a good thing. But, no? We got a no in the audience. That is not a good thing. So, fair enough, fair point, which really brings me into this. Social media is monitored. This is the part that I'm talking about convenience, about freely offering things, giving your data away. They were able to figure out where people that did not want to be found, trying to do harm to us in our country, they were able to find them using that data. Law enforcement is starting to utilize that to look at you, to look at us, to figure out what kind of information we like and how we like to speak and what we like to do. And like I said at the beginning, law enforcement has a very hard job. I'm not trying to take away from that. But you have a right to privacy. They don't need a warrant or any sort of oversight to look at your public posts. When you say, how'd you get that data? How'd you know that was me? Well, I went to your Twitter account and you said you were there. Oh, fantastic. So those EULAs, those end user license agreements, allow for your data to be shared as part of a legal request. You can go and look at news articles where major providers of online services are already tied in. They're directly tied into the back end to be able to pull this data. You've agreed to it. So you need to be aware of what you're agreeing to and the tools you need to use to keep yourself safe and keep your data private. So you say this couldn't happen to me. You say, like I said, cat pictures, I check out the memes, I'm good to go. A Reddit investigation after the Boston bombing falsely identified Sunil Tripathi. He was so targeted that he later committed suicide. People thought that he committed this act because of information they found online, thought it was him, and everyone was so focused on it, the pressure finally took him from us. Find My iPhone leads people to somebody's house. So you ever use the Find My iPhone app? And say, oh, my iPhone's here, I left it under the couch. Great. Well, people were getting their phone stolen and showing up at this random couple's house saying, I know you've got my phone, I know you've got to give it to me. It was an error. It's a GPS error. No one knows why. The carriers don't know why. The phone vendors don't know why. The police have gotten to the point where they come out there and they say, no, these people really don't have your phone. There are Snapchat revenge sites where people are storing data that you think has been long since erased. There's a farm in Kansas where law enforcement officials, firefighters, marshals, people going through divorces are showing up saying, I know whatever thing happened here because the GPS records say they did. Yeah, it's a programming error. They literally default to the middle of nowhere, and that middle of nowhere happened to be their house if there's an error in the code. And the last thing is a book called 3 Felonies a Day. If you think you don't have to worry about this, just keep this in mind. This book, 3 Felonies a Day, details how you, me, everyone within the sound of my voice commits at least 3 felonies a day. You're doing something illegal whether you realize it or not. You really should want your information to be private so you have the opportunity to speak to a lawyer to find out, hey, what kind of trouble am I really in here? What's going on? How do I protect myself? So, things to take away from this is, what do you think online activities say about you? Do you think it's a realistic depiction of you? Do you think it can be taken out of context? Yeah, all the answers are yes. So you might say, okay, well, law enforcement needs these backdoors. They need to be able to connect into the systems where I have data to protect me. If it's a legal request, shouldn't they be able to do it? Well, a lot of our Congress people think so. They're filing the Compliance with Court Orders Act, actually requesting that we require backdoors through encryption, through security tools. Jackson, no. Requiring these security tools be bypassed by law enforcement. And you know what? That seems reasonable until you realize that these same encryption backdoors were found in the second largest networking provider in the world, Juniper Networks. They found these backdoors where people were able to bypass SSL, security type protections that in the end, attackers found. And once the attackers find the backdoor, once the people that mean to do us harm find the backdoor, it's no longer a benefit to law enforcement. It's no longer protecting you. And the backdoor will always be found. So much so that an encryption working group put together by 2 House committees basically found there's no way to stop bad actors from using encryption. If you want to use encryption to protect yourself, we can make law after law. Criminals are still going to use it. And the committee basically says law enforcement should explore some other mechanism that doesn't involve backdoors to protect us, because all we're doing is taking away privacy rights. So this was actually a pretty famous story here. Unfortunately, San Bernardino shooting, terrorist attack, the FBI needed a cell phone unlocked. They said there was information on there. Apple said, sorry, we can't do it. We don't have the codes. A company called Celebrite made security tools that could actually get past that. Great, everything's right with the world. Legal order, phone gets data off of it, everything's great, right? You're probably betting it's probably not, right? Okay. Those same tools were found by attackers, stolen from the company, reverse engineered, and now they're in the hands of criminals, attackers, potentially terrorists. I mean, it's unlimited who they could be in the hands of. So we're going to talk about online privacy, but in all reality, online privacy, protecting yourself from stalking, cyberbullying, abuse, all of those items, really, it's no different than the real world. Security is about behavior. It's not about the tool. So keep in mind, perfect security, it doesn't exist. Anyone that tells you that it does, they're either naive or lying to you. It's the bottom line. Perfect security doesn't exist. Going off the grid is nearly impossible. How many of you freak out when you leave your phone at home for a couple hours? Now imagine making that a lifestyle. Going off the grid is nearly impossible at this point. No protection's unbreakable. It's about reducing your attack surface. What's the attack surface? Attack surface is what attackers know about you and how they will try and leverage that against you. So putting less information online, putting information online that can't uniquely identify you. Now, I've got a quote in here. It's an old Chinese proverb. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. So if you're one of those people who's sharing a lot of information, not really realizing what you're putting online, the tools you're using, who's listening, now is the right time to start paying attention. So again, it's about behavior. It's not about technology. If you change your behavior, you're going to be more secure. So we talk about the Moscow rules. This is a set of rules that was kind of developed for people operating in high security espionage type environments. And I'm going to go through these 10 rules pretty quick here. But if you keep these in mind with any tool you use, with anywhere you go, you are going to be safer your data is going to be safer. You're going to put less information online. So assume nothing. Don't assume your tools work. What happens if they fail? What is the worst case scenario? Let's say you and your partner decide to split ways, and they know all your Facebook logins. They know your bank logins. They know where your mom lives. These are worrisome things. How can you protect yourself? How can you limit that damage? So assume nothing. Assume nothing's perfect. Never go against your gut. I have a substantial gut. I don't not listen to it. Don't go against your gut. If you feel an instinct saying, I shouldn't be here, I need to leave, this isn't safe, go listen to it. There's a great quote by Gavin de Becker from his book, The Gift of Fear, which basically says, your instinct is either a response to something and always has your best interest in heart. Listen to it. Everyone is potentially under opposition control. So that's an old Cold War era kind of naming convention. But what it really means is trust no one. The people that you talk to, assume that they're going to share your information. How many times have you been on a social networking service and you type something and then a friend tags you and they tag you in a photo and they tag you in this? You can't control that information anymore. Assume that every person you talk to could potentially share your information. And if you do that, you'll be a little more careful about what you put online. Don't look back. You're never completely alone. So this is the idea that assume that you're always being monitored. Would you want people to hear what you're saying? And if you wouldn't, if you'd rather have a more private conversation, choose where you're going to be working. Go to someplace public, go to a bar, or go somewhere where there's a lot of ambient noise, etc. The same holds true for privacy tools. Use tools where you blend into the noise. That brings us to the next one. Go with the flow, blend in. If you think someone is monitoring you online and you believe an email account or social media account is compromised, don't stop using it. That seems instinctual, right? Oh, I'm just not going to use it. If they want to monitor you, they're going to figure out where you're communicating next. Continue using that account. Use it for TMZ and gossip and getting marketing emails, etc. And the communications you need to have that you feel are private, move to another channel. If they think you're still using that tool, they have no reason to try and figure out what next tool you're using. So vary your pattern, but stay within your cover. Again, we're using kind of old world Cold War terms, but vary your pattern. Don't always take the same routes home. Don't always go to the same websites. Don't always trust the same sources. Take a look at things from multiple angles and attack them different ways. Go to different restaurants. Try new places. Hey, you know what? It's probably good for you. Get to know a new restaurant. Go different places. Lull them into a false sense of complacency. So if you feel you're being monitored, make them feel like they know everything about you. Keep those alternate accounts. Keep posting on social media, but do things that you would not be worried about disclosing. Do not harass the opposition. Don't troll. Don't. Just in general, don't. But don't troll. Don't be like, oh, they'll never find me. I've got the super secret hacker tools. I'm behind 7 proxies hacking a Gibson and whatever. That's for the folks at home and people are anyway. But yeah, no, don't do that. If you say like, I'm the best super elite privacy hacker expert, someone's going to go, no, you're not. And they're going to figure out how to get in. Pick a time and place for action. If you feel you're being monitored, if you're being stalked, if you feel that you're being harassed, set a bar. And when you pass that bar, don't justify it. Don't say, oh, well, they didn't really mean it. Treat every threat as a promise. Treat every threat as a promise. If someone says they're going to hurt you, if someone says they're going to hurt your family, if someone says that they're listening to all your phone calls, assume that they are and act accordingly. So keep your options open. Have accounts ready to jump to. Have alternate email accounts that you just keep waiting in case you need to jump to something. Keep alternate social media accounts that you just keep waiting in case you separate from a partner, in case you change jobs under very bad circumstances where you don't want people trying to follow you. Keep those accounts ready. So this all seems silly, right? But really what we're talking about is protecting people from some very basic unfortunate things. Domestic abuse situations, where formerly shared accounts or information. You know how hard it is to change your social security number? That's hard.
Yeah.
If you or your peers, are member of an at-risk demographic, I mentioned some of those marginalized groups. It's unfortunate, but it happens. I don't like it, and I want to hopefully when we leave today, Jack and I will give you some tools to help protect yourself. In any situation concerning personal safety, Having alternate forms of communication, if you're trying to help somebody get out of one of those situations, get out of a domestic abuse situation, get out of a situation where they're possibly going to be hurt, have tools to do that. We're going to show you some of them, like Signal, where you can speak and not be monitored. Some of the others are activism. A lot of marches going on for a lot of things right now. What happens in 20 years when someone says, maybe that march wasn't right? There's a lot of people that were involved in politics 20, 30 years ago that thought, yeah, no, I'm on the right side of history. And it turns out they weren't. So do you want people knowing about that? And then general communication hygiene. Just make sure you're not putting too much information online. This applies to everything you do. Real life, online, privacy tools, etc. So I think I've talked quite enough, and I'm going to hand it over to my friend Jack Norman here, and he's going to take you through some online privacy and tools here.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, we're going to get into some of the tactical approaches now that you can take in order to kind of ensure this privacy that hopefully Ian has driven home should be really important to you. Some common data collection points. There's a whole slew of stuff that can be collected about you based on your online activity or through physical means. And these are kind of the three common categories. You've got information in transit, any network that you transmit information over, your cellular, how many people in here have their Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and cell phone service on in their phone right now. That's three different modes of transit that can be used to collect information. There's things like blue snarfing. There's things like being able to slurp up Wi-Fi feeds. It's unencrypted and stuff like that. We'll get into some ways to help protect against some of that. There's data in motion, a little bit different than transit. Think transit like the highway. Data in motion is the data packets. Think of your text messages, your emails, your internet traffic, whether it be via HTTP or HTTPS. Then you've got your data at rest. Where does your data sit? You've got data on a hard drive on those fancy MacBooks of yours. You've got data sitting out in the cloud, probably in Dropbox or in Gmail or in Yahoo. You've got all these places that you think of as being, oh, this is all my data, but a lot of times it's easy to lose control over the fact that that data lives all over the internet. This was a pretty picture, but it's copyrighted, so we had to change it to this ugly chart. But there's a really good article that came out. And on Ars Technica, you get a chance to look it up. They polled what the professionals, like people in information security, do that they view as being important when it comes to privacy, and what the general layman typically does. You'll notice on the top of the what people think they should do, antivirus is at the top. You'll notice the antivirus didn't even make the list of what the pros do. At the end of the day, I'm not saying antivirus is bad. If your grandma has a tendency to click everything, she should probably have it. But in reality, it catches maybe 30 to 40% of any of the bugs that are out there, and it's not the most ideal thing. Another thing you're going to see is installing software updates did not make it to what people think they should do. That is probably the most critical thing you can do ever, because they're always finding new security patches, or they're always filling new security patches. They're always updating various software to harden different things. Adobe Flash gets updated like once a day because it gets hacked all the time, much like Java. And much like, even though Apple, most people used to believe, oh, it's Apple, it's secure. I don't need to worry about it. Apple doesn't get hacked. Well, that's not true. Apple just does a much better job of hiding when they patch stuff. Apple's like, check out all these cool features. And oh, by the way, we fixed about 100 security things too. So that's something you've got to be wary about. So whenever you see that update thing, it should make you happy. You should see, oh, I go to my app store, I got 10 applications that need to be updated. Let me do that right now because it's going to make my application work better and it's going to make me more secure. Using unique passwords did not make the list for folks that, or for the typical layman folks. That falls right in line with using strong passwords for the pros. And the reason being is, say I've got my LinkedIn account. How many people know what happened to LinkedIn in the last 2 years? There was a big data breach where they lost something like 13 bazillion accounts. Say you're a guy that's got a LinkedIn account and you've got a super strong password. It's 99 characters long, special stuff, and uppers and lower cases and numbers, and that just got put in a dump. Well, they can now use that super strong password. Is that, yes, absolutely, technically it is a secure password, but if you're using that for email, Facebook, and all these other things, the first thing they're trying are things from these password databases. And just to give you an idea of how big a lot of these password databases can get, your average text file, if you create something, put a little note in your desktop, maybe a couple kilobytes, could be 100 kilobytes. These password databanks that they've got or a text file that gets up into the gigabytes. We're talking 4, 5, 6 gigabytes worth of information. That is a lot of text. So it is very important to have unique passwords amongst all of your accounts. Now, how do you do that? Use a password manager. Password manager also did not make what the regular person thought was important. That is because no one can remember a 99 character password and remember it amongst 99 different accounts. Password manager is great. Use them. Best practices for email. We've got use a strong and unique password. We just kind of drove that home. Two-factor authentication is your friend. Most of your major accounts do that. Your Gmails, I'm not sure about Yahoo. Don't use Yahoo. Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, they all use two-factor authentication. One thing I always stress to people is the importance of your email account. Most people think, certain accounts are more important than other accounts, and I would argue email is right up there with one of your most important accounts. And the reason being is, if I own your email, I pretty much own you, because I can reset your passwords to just about any other service by having your email account and be like, yeah, send me that updated password again. I forgot it, blah, blah, blah. And you can go and reset it with that. Confirm suspicious attachments and links. One thing I don't like about these fancy iPhones that we got is when you're opening up an email on a computer, you can hover your mouse over the link and it'll show you where the link goes. If you're getting an email that says it's from Bank of America and you hover over the link and it says it's going to I'mGonnaOwnAllYourCrap.com, you probably shouldn't click on that. One issue I have with the iPhone, though, is the only way to really check a link is to hold your finger on the link until it pops up so you can see what the link is. The problem is if you don't hold long enough, you click the link and you just owned yourself. So I hope they work out that feature and make that a little better. Another thing to do is look closely at the sender's email address. There's a lot of people spoofing big companies' email addresses. I'll spell Verizon, Verison. A lot of times it's not easy to catch some of these things. Some companies will go and buy a lot of these other domains just to try to prevent that, but they can hardly get them all, and they don't want to own 300 different domain names that are off by numbers. In fact, there was just a story recently. Google is now buying a google.com domain address where someone swapped out the first G with the Italian letter G and using the Italian keyboard, and they hosted a bunch of websites and hosted a bunch of nasty stuff. So another fun fact, which I was unaware of till we got involved with this project, was emails older than 180 days are considered abandoned. Law enforcement does not need any excuse to look at those emails and read those emails. They don't need to contact you. They don't need to get your username and password. If they have a way that they can slurp up that information, which they do, you need to know that if it's older than 180 days, they can look at it without a warrant. So it's in your best interest to start to purge the 9 years worth of archived emails you have in that super sweet Gmail account that you got back 10 years ago when you were in junior high school. So do not use a simple password. Do not click on suspicious attachments and links. We talked about that a little bit a second ago. Do not enter any personal information to a pop-up. For the most part, no website, unless they're really terrible at their application security, will ask you to click on a link and input information in order to update passwords, update information, insert social security numbers, that kind of stuff. So just assume that you've been phished. If you click on it and it pops up, just don't do anything with it. Close it out. And for good measure, if it is a Bank of America or something like that, or they're mocking a Bank of America website, go to your account and change your password. Probably not a bad idea. And don't use real information for your security questions. There was a famous story a couple of years ago about Sarah Palin, how they owned her email account. They owned it because she used real answers to real questions. They're like, that was public knowledge. Goes back to all the data points that Ian was talking about what's available about you. Like she probably had something like, oh, what state was I governor of? Oh, I was Alaska. So they picked that, and then they figured it out. Then they didn't need to know her super strong password if she had one, which I doubt. And a password is like a toothbrush. Choose a good one. Don't share it with anyone, and change it frequently. Best practices in the browser. Use a modern browser, which goes back to the software updates. If Chrome pushes an update, use that update. Maybe it breaks one of your cool plugins that allows you to load cat videos faster. It's okay. They'll update it eventually. Run the modern software. Use antivirus software that scans downloads. Now, we just talked about how the pros don't necessarily have it in their top 5. Doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. It does protect you from 30-40% of the bugs that are out there, and it also can do things like link scanning. If it's got link scanning, I don't know how many of you have been in here. When you're browsing around on Google, you'll see the links and they're green, green, green. That means those links have been indexed in some form or fashion. They've been determined to be a healthier link. I wouldn't necessarily trust them with my life, but it's better than nothing. Gives you an idea. Use a pop-up blocker. Pop-up blockers can save you from a whole lot of stuff. You know, things that end up being, because it's automatically populating that information to your face when the pop-up comes up. So use a pop-up blocker or something that actually asks whether or not you want to bring a pop-up, because sometimes you need a pop-up if you're in a bank or something. Use HTTPS. The S stands for secure. That means your information as you're browsing over the web is encrypted. That's important. And we'll get into that when we talk more about VPNs. VPNs will take all traffic that you're using on the internet and run them through an encrypted channel, whether they're HTTP or HTTPS. Do not use for your public Wi-Fi. I say that with the caveat of, yes, I've been in an airport. I have used the public Wi-Fi. However, when I'm using it, I up the security protocols that I use. I use a VPN whenever I'm on public Wi-Fi. I'm not sure if any of you guys remember, there was a plugin called Firesheep back in the day that plugged into Firefox, and if anybody that was transmitting information via HTTP or an unencrypted means, you were able to sniff up their login credentials to Facebook or all sorts of things like that. Those things exist, and it's easy to do when you're doing it over public Wi-Fi. Don't let your browser store your passwords. I like Google Chrome for a lot of things, but we recently did an analysis of their browser, and they're abysmal at storing your passwords. You should have a password manager. Password managers like LastPass, OnePass, they make your life very convenient. They'll auto-populate fields for you while being able to help you update passwords uniquely, often, and they'll do it automatically. So there's no reason to use browser passwords. It's just another place that you could be putting passwords that could get compromised. And I know Chrome does a pretty poor job, and I use terrible overall, so I'm sure it's a terrible browser to use as well. So, and then the last one is don't enter any personal information into an unexpected pop-up. Yes, I said that before, but yes, it's that important. Think of the internet as a public place. Don't leave your details lying around. Best practices for social media. Use and understand the privacy settings. Don't sign up for any social media without at least understanding what you can limit and what you can't. A lot of people don't understand that the images that you have for your profile pics and stuff are public. Understand the terms and conditions. I know what you're thinking. I'm not a lawyer. How am I supposed to understand these 56 pages of terms and conditions? There are people that go out and write articles on this kind of stuff. If you just to simply Google Facebook terms and conditions, what's bad, you'll get articles that come up and be like, oh, that's ugly. You should be careful of this. Understand that using false information can be your friend. You can go and you can do things, which we'll show you in some of the later videos, about being able to generate some false identities for sites that you don't really care about. You just wanted to use a service in short term, something like that. Misinformation can be your friend because it makes you harder to find and it makes it harder to pin down who exactly you are. Use caution before you click links. Once again, I've mentioned it. Yes, it's that important. Minimize third-party applications. A lot of people don't think when they're in Facebook that there's third-party applications running. I'm not sure how many of you have ever used Farmville or like Ghetto Stars or the Mafia games. Those are all third-party applications. Those third-party applications have their own terms of service and end-user license agreements, which you're agreeing to by playing their game. So you need, just because if Facebook's is awesome, you're like, I'm good with everything that Facebook does, you may not be good with what Mafia Stars or Farmville or any of those other games do with your information. And nobody checks those. Do not post, tweet, Snapchat, anything that you don't want any future employer or loved one or family member to see, because it gets out there. Use your legal name as your profile name. I go back and forth with this, but for the most part, it's not a bad idea. If your name, like my name is Jack Norman, I can put like J-No, or I can put J-Rock or some other name. It makes it a little bit harder sometimes for people to find you, but it can at least make it a little bit harder to aggregate all of your information and figure out that these are all the same person. Sometimes use a middle name instead of your first name. That can help too. Or spell your name wrong by a letter. Link your social media to your work email. Yeah, don't do that. There's a website called haveibeenpwned.com. I work for a Fortune 400 company. We have lots of employees. I talked to haveibeenpwned.com. I was like, can you just dump to me every email address that you've got from every database of websites that have been owned that use an hdsupply.com email address? And it wasn't that great. So if you are not paying, you are the product. Ian mentioned that earlier, yet it is that important. Best practices for mobile. A lot of people don't think that device in their pocket is a computer. It is a computer. It is more of a computer than it is a phone. So you got to treat it like one. Lock your device with a password or a PIN. You've got a password on your laptop. Keep a password on your phone. Back up your data. And understanding where that backup is going. Apple does a really good job of being like, you can't install anything or you can't log into this brand new phone until you've put in your iCloud credentials. Understand what's going out to iCloud. I'm not sure how many people in here have heard of the fappening, where there was private pictures of people that were stored in iCloud insecurely. That's how they were hacked. They were hacked by getting into their iCloud account is because they didn't completely understand where their information was going. Keep your software up to date. Once again, very important point, worth mentioning 2, 3, maybe 4 times. Enable the ability to remotely wipe your device. Phones are easy to lose. They're on me all the time. Ian mentioned that when you get up, you feel naked. Sometimes you're loud. Like, oh, I don't feel it. I'm getting phantom vibrations because I don't have it in my pocket right now. Oh. So it has become a lifestyle for most people, yet they're very easy to lose. If it's sitting on a table and I go to the bathroom at Starbucks, I may come back and it may not be there anymore. I need to have some sort of protocols in place to be able to wipe that because it has contacts. It has my calendar. It may have pictures. It knows what kind of software I use. It may have automatic entrances into Facebook and stuff, the apps that are already open. So it's important that you know where it is and you have some sort of means to wipe it. And do not send any image, photo that you not want to be in the public. We have a good quote. If Beyonce's famous legal team could not get all of those internet pictures from the halftime show, I believe from last year's Super Bowl, of her being really into her performance, then people turned it into Rambo, Get to the Chopper pictures, all sorts of stuff. You can't either. So be very wary about what you post in public. Do not use biometrics. Once again, it's one of those things, I actually use it, but I understand the caveat of when and where I'm using it. The one thing about biometrics, I don't think Ian mentioned it, was there was a legal case that said, is compelling you for your password something that law enforcement can do? No, they can't currently. They can, however, use your biometric. If your phone is off, or if your phone is on and it only requires my thumbprint to get in, and law enforcement wants to talk to me, they can make me put my thumb on that because they can legally take my fingerprints, just like they would if they were to take you down to the station and question you. So that is something to be wary about. One way to get around that is if you think you're in a situation where someone may be questioning you, turn your phone off. Because when you turn your phone back on, it requires your PIN, which you cannot be compelled to give. Jailbreak or root your device. When you jailbreak and root your device, yes, it's fun. Yes, I've done it. I don't do it on my production device, the device I use on a daily basis. That is because you're hacking your phone. You are opening it up to you are exploiting a bug with your operating system and opening it up to the world to be less secure in a lot of different ways. So just understand that that's what you're doing when you go and you jailbreak a device. And don't leave Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on all the time. Going back to attack surface, it will open up your attack surface to a much broader range. If I can attack your phone via cell phone connection, via Wi-Fi, via Bluetooth, via NFC, that's 4 different methods of ways I can attack you. Whereas if you've only got LTE on, I'm limited down to cell phone, which is one of the more difficult ones to attack. Can I have your phone to just look around? No. The answer to that question is no. That's your computer. How are we doing on time? Getting into privacy tools real quick. I mentioned password managers. We're not going to go into a lot of these, but I use LastPass. I also use 1Password, and I use KeePass at work. Why do I use multiple password managers? What am I, a sadist? I am not. The reason being is because, like we mentioned earlier, certain accounts are more important than other accounts. I may have 50 accounts of crap sites that I go order one-off stuff from every once in a while, or marketing sites, or news feeds. And then I've got my sites like my email, like my Amazon, like my banks, stuff like that. I want them in their own. The beauty of password managers, as I mentioned before, they will automatically update your password based on your formula. So if I say, hey, Amazon.com, I want my password to be 99 characters, use all the fancy whiz-bang characters, I can log into LastPass and it'll say, hey, I noticed you haven't updated your password in 6 months. You want me to do that for you? Be like, yep. Then it'll go and it will update the password in the background for you with Amazon.com, and it will do all of that. And so then I've now got an updated 99-character super strong password, and I didn't have to do anything except, and it'll do it for multiple passwords at the same time. It'll be like, these 15 sites haven't been updated in 6 months. Do you want me to update them? Sure. And it'll go and use the previous formula that you choose and do it for you. Remote wipe utilities. iCloud does remote wipe with Find My iPhone. Android Device Manager has their own way to do remote wipe as well. Prey, which was a new one, which I didn't know about till just recently, they have a free service to do remote wiping and stuff like that, but they also have, like, you can pay $5 a month and you can get access to all sorts of stuff, and they work on everything: iPhones, Androids, Mac, Windows. So it could kind of be a one-stop shop for you to be able to go and delete stuff. Browser plugins, things like Privacy Badger, uBlock Origin, and HTTPS Everywhere. We stressed how using HTTPS is good. HTTPS Everywhere will make it so, say you forgot to put the S in, it will check to see if there's an S version, and if there is an S version, it'll load it up. If there is not an S version, you're sunk, but at least you tried. And that's where VPN comes in. It's not an S version, you can use VPN, because VPN will encrypt all of your stuff. And it's not just for watching Netflix when you're in a foreign country. I spent some time in my previous job in Korea at various bases and stuff like that, and you couldn't get Netflix unless you were based out of the U.S. You could use VPN and say, I'm running my IP through Miami. I am now all of a sudden in the U.S., and I could watch Netflix. It is more for just stuff like that. It adds a layer of privacy because your IP isn't put out there as easily. It's behind a proxy, and a proxy basically being a middleman between you and your network connections. So they're good to have and worth the $5 or $6 a month or whatever that it costs. And antivirus packages. Windows Defender does a pretty good job. Microsoft gets a lot of flack, but they got owned so much in the early 2000s that they got real serious about security, and they've done a pretty good job with that package. Enough so where you're actually starting to see some enterprises, especially when their security team is becoming less in favor of endpoint protection or other types of antivirus. They're just defaulting to Windows and using that as a bare minimum amongst other technologies to do security. Avast is also another free one, and AVG is also another free one. Some best practices to remember about your tools. They all change. Popular story, AdBlock Plus used to be one that a lot of security folks used. AdBlock kind of got bought by a Chinese company in some sort of underground weird deal, and no one really heard of them, but it's still out there. So everybody pretty much changed from. You got to kind of be on top of some of that stuff. And what's good today may not be good tomorrow. So Adobe Flash used to be all the rage for building websites. Now Adobe Flash is a security nightmare. No tool is perfect. Once again, Moscow rules. Assume nothing. Assume that you are in a situation where you need to have your stuff in place. A tool is only as good as its operator. You need to understand what's there, and you need to understand what it can do for you and what it is doing for you and what it isn't doing for you, and if you may need to take other means to kind of compensate for some of that. Once again, kind of to harken back what we talked about in the beginning, these common data protection tools, you run into a situation where you've got networking, things in transit, VPNs take care of that, data in motion, Signal, which we're going to show you videos on, temporary emails, which are pretty slick, which we're also going to show you a video on, various add-ons, data at rest, have the alternative accounts, have misinformation, leave dead accounts out there, subscribe to a bunch of crap that you're not really interested in and just let them fill up. And remove your data as best you can. Stuff that's out there that is important, limit where it lives. And those are a couple different tools. And now we'll get into videos.
All right. So yeah, we've got a couple videos here. We're probably going to go a couple minutes over on time, so apologize. But we've got some videos pre-prepared to try and control that time. So the first thing we're going to show you is installing a VPN service using an anonymous gift card. So going to a store, purchasing a gift card, and running through that. So basically, this is just going to take you through it, and Jack and I will go kind of back and forth on these slides. But we're loading incognito window, which we didn't talk about before. It's basically making sure that you're not caching anything locally on the machine, cookies, etc. So as you go to these sites, it's not keeping that information. We're going to go to privateinternetaccess.com. There's tons of VPN tools out there. This is just one that I know we both like.
Although one of the reasons we picked it There's a website called Torrent Freak, which lists kind of the top VPN providers. One thing we do like about private internet access, you've got to understand where the company's based and what their country laws are. The U.S. does not have a retention policy when it comes to VPN products.
Right.
So we, like PIA, they are out of the U.S. They do not have a retention policy, so they won't hold any data whatsoever. Right. So understanding kind of what they're bound to, like UK, I used to use Hide My Ass VPN. That's out of the UK. Don't use that one because GCHQ is a thing, and they do have data retention rights that they have to adhere to.
So here's an important part to keep in mind. This is that paying with an anonymous branded gift card. One of the things you can do is go to a store, get a gift card for $50, and they have literally hundreds, we're going to scroll through them real quick, of different gift cards that you can take, turn in, and purchase. That means you're not listed, you're not connected to your credit card. You're not connected to your home address. You're not connected to all these pieces because you went and took cash, traded it for another mechanism, and then used that to purchase your VPN service. It's making one more level, one more obstacle for people trying to figure out who you are and what you're doing. So we're going to make that purchase now, and blur this out because I want to make sure that that's the data that's protected here.
Because security.
Yeah, security's good. So we're going to enter in the card number data off that gift card. It's going to go in. It's going to check the balance because they want to make sure that it's an actual gift card. And basically, we're paying $50 for 366 days of VPN access. I'm going to put in an email address that was created for the presentation, James Madison at fourthamendmentasaservice.com. And basically, they'll email you a set of credentials. So you're probably saying to yourself, but wait a minute, they're going to email me credentials. That sounds pretty easy to trace. We're going to show you in a video in a few minutes here 10-minute basically burner email accounts so you can get your credentials.
I prefer Gorilla Mail because you can get the email address at sharklasers.com.
Who doesn't like sharks with lasers?
Exactly.
That's right. So now we're going into Gmail. This is going to cut for a second here. So basically your username and password, and then you go back to the site. And little pro tip, I actually ran into this making the video. They will send you a link for the actual installer. Don't use the link in the email. They haven't updated it yet. Actually go to the page and download the client. I spent about 20 minutes beating my head against the wall on that. So pro tip from me to you. So basically you'll download the installer. We're obviously doing this on a Mac. And what we want to show you here is really what you should be getting from these videos as we run through them, is these are being done in real time. This is how quickly you can go from I'm just on the internet, and notice, you may have noticed at the top of these things, there's an IP address that's blurred. They show you what your externally facing IP address is. They know because that's how networking works. They know where you're coming from. Once we get this installed, we'll actually select a different location. In the video, you'll see we actually select London. So whoever is seeing us connect to their website over the VPN, know our termination point is London. I am not in London. I'd like to be in London, but I'm not in London. So we'll take those credentials and we add them in to the client that was just installed. And it takes a couple seconds here, but then in a few minutes, or not minutes, a few seconds, you'll see the actual drop downs here for the selections. So we'll paste those credentials in. And like I said, what I like about these videos is that they are real time. This isn't, all right, I'm going to go home. It's going to take me 20 minutes of reading something, and then I got to go get it installed, etc. You go from no VPN to VPN in about 5 minutes.
0 to hero.
So here we are. Notice all these connection types. We can come from Florida, Texas, Chicago, Montreal, Sydney. Then we can go more, Denmark, Finland, Switzerland, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all ways that you can say, all right, I want this traffic to look like it's originating from a different point. And you'll notice here I call out the IP address. I'm going to go connect to London. And right now I'm on Bright House Networks. Many of us probably have Bright House Networks. And you'll see the little robot connect. And once the little robot connects, we'll refresh the page. And hoocha, 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 lobster.
Green robot good. Red robot means it's disconnected. Gray robot means you don't have PIA turned on. So.
And there we go. So now we're at Chopa, I can't say that right, LLC, and the IP address is out of London. Our data is now encapsulated and protected, and it looks like we're sitting maybe on the River Thames surfing the internet. And that's it. That's the VPN service. So go ahead and hit the next slide for me, Jack. Now we're going to talk about Signal. Signal is an encrypted messaging app. You've probably actually heard about it in the news recently, but you can go from not having a way to send encrypted messages to your friends to being able to do that completely encrypted, not WhatsApp, Facebook in the middle, completely encrypted in about 2 minutes. So you'll go to the App Store, you'll grab Signal Private Messenger, you'll download the app and put it on your phone. And one of the really cool things about this app is, unlike a lot of apps or PGP or other tools where you got to have friends that are like really into security, they're like, oh yeah, no, we're going to do this, we're going to have handles and all this cool stuff, and I'll have to communicate with you. They make it more realistic. It actually looks at your contact list and will ask you for permission for that and says, oh wait, Jack has Signal. Your other friend has Signal based on their phone number. We know that we can communicate with each other because the encryption keys are kept on the phones themselves. So no one can monitor in between, but I don't have to go through a bunch of hoops to try and figure out if I can talk to Jack. I just look at his contact. It says he has Signal, message him.
You can also make phone calls, and it'll give you like a little code word. Like if I call Ian via Signal. Now, granted, he uses data, not minutes, just a warning. Right. But it might say snow cone. So when he picks up the phone, he'll be like, snow cone?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I'll see that on my side. And I'll be like, yes, snow cone, I want.
Then we'll know it's encrypted and no one's tampered with it.
Right. So actually, to Jack's point, a new feature that just came out, I think it's beta or coming out, is actually encrypted video chat. So Skype style, FaceTime style, encrypted chat through the app. And you can also set these messages to self-destruct. And when they say self-destruct, they mean it. It's not Snapchat, whatnot. Now, mind you, could you screen capture this? Clearly. I'm doing it now. So keep that in mind, that nothing is perfect. That goes back to our Moscow rules. So just as we were chatting, we've installed Signal. So you're going to hit the next slide for me? This is probably my favorite, because in 5 minutes, we're going to go to having like all the browser protection and show you how to use temporary email. So again, we're going to pull up a browser. This time didn't use an incognito window. You're going to ask me why security professional. I'll go because I forgot to click on it. Think about that.
The other thing, too, don't think incognito mode is going to get you out of being monitored at work.
Good point.
That does not work. We have other tools that we can monitor where you're going. You're still transmitting information to the internet.
So Privacy Badger is the first tool we're installing, right? And basically what this does is it protects all those cookies and the information going back to the advertising networks, saying they went here, they clicked on this, they looked at this image for 5 seconds. You go in, you install it through the Chrome store. We're using the Chrome store for this one, but it works in Firefox, it works in everything. And you can learn how Privacy Badger protects you. But basically what it does is it looks to say, okay, what is tracking you? Let's block that connection. If for whatever reason it's not working, you can disable it for that site. And you'll actually see us do that with uBlock Origin in the 10-minute email accounts. So the next thing we're going to set up here is HTTPS everywhere. Jack talked about that. Basically, if HTTPS exists for a website, that's transport layer security, meaning the connection between you and the website is secured. If it exists, it will point you to it. You can also set it so that if a HTTPS website doesn't exist, it'll just block it. Say, I don't want to chat with this website. I can't establish a secure connection. So you're seeing how simple this is. In Chrome, you go to the Chrome store, you grab it, you plug it in, you're done. Most of it's set it and forget it. People just don't set it and forget it. So there it is. You can add custom rules as well. You can get as fancy as you want with this to say, oh, when it's this page using this regex setting, some of you may be technology people here and on the internet, you can go in and do regex settings. Most people don't need to do this. You either say, yeah, I trust the site, or no, I don't. So we've got HTTPS everywhere installed. Now we're going to go to uBlock Origin. uBlock Origin has a lot of the same functions. I mean, it goes through and blocks a lot of that tracking, but actually gets into a lot more detail. So thing is, though, is it's great. You've got now 2 layers of protection doing often the same thing. If one doesn't work, the other one will work. It's a concept called defense in depth. So basically, you'll add the extension just like we did before, and that's it. We've got 3 browser plugins so far that are now protecting data being pulled out of our browser.
One thing to mention, too, we've done our homework with these browser plugins. Like I mentioned, AdBlock Plus. Ghostery is another bad one. They were doing some things where they would sell basically, ad companies are getting angry because these pop-up blockers are coming out and blocking ads. And Ghostery is like, man, we'd like to make some money. So these ad companies would go, hey, we'll give you some money if you don't block our ads. And they're like, okay, that sounds good. So
convenient.
You have the pop-up blocker that was now intentionally not blocking things for the people that would pay the money. So Privacy Badger, though, is put out by the EFF. Really good people. Donate money to them.
Give them money. They're awesome.
Yeah, and uBlock Origin is also very good. Yeah. However, this is just a snapshot in time. This is in February 2017.
Right.
This could all very well be
Tools
different in
change.
6 months or a year.
So 10-minute email. Jack mentioned Gorilla Mail. There's a bunch of them out there. Basically, it's a web browser. It gives you a temporary email address. This one's good for 10 minutes. I can re-up it for 10 more minutes. That email address now, I can say I'm signing up for a marketing website to get coupons for a service I have no intention of using after I buy tickets online or something to that effect. I can use one of these email addresses to send an email and receive it. You'll notice I actually just turned off uBlock Origin. And look, suddenly there's all these ads. It's crazy. Don't get me wrong.
And it's funny because last night when we were looking at this, the ads were coming up strollers and all sorts of
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My wife
yeah.
is very pregnant. If she's
Would've thought.
watching this, I'm sorry. So basically we're going to go into that Gmail account. We're going to send an email to this account. You'll actually see it arrive in the browser. And basically, if you need credentials, if you need something to get logged into a website, you don't want them to be able to track you. You don't want them sending you a bunch of marketing information. You don't want them mining that data. You can use these sites as a temporary email address. Really, the whole point of this is while I'm typing this email in the video is keeping you from being the lowest hanging fruit. These are pretty easy things to do. But doing it removes, and statistics are made up on the spot, but 90% of the data that you're probably putting out there. Most of it's browser tracking. So if you don't have email addresses set up for accounts you don't need, if you're not getting a bunch of cookies and tracking data about what you're doing online sent back, you're doing a lot better than the average person. So you'll notice here we sent that email from Gmail. It showed up in the browser there. There it is. Great for marketing sites that sell your data. You can even respond, and this is kind of cool. During that 10 minutes, you can send an email back. So if the site requires you to say, oh, yes, this is my email address, and click on it, you can actually send an email back saying, yes, it is, or whatever it is. Now, keep in mind, a lot of sites start blocking those domains. So that's why Jack was talking about Gorilla Mail. They'll just buy new random domains. They'll be like shark lasers, hammer rainbows, whatever it is, because it's not in the spam list, which is where this email ended up, which is the spam list.
And another great feature for that too, one of the main reasons I use temporary emails is maybe it's something I want to keep. I'm like, oh, I'm downloading a piece of software. Maybe I'm downloading a piece of VPN and I wanted to use a junk email address. You can forward that email that just went to your junk email address to your email address that you want to keep. I wouldn't keep it for longer than 180 days for aforementioned reasons, but that is a good use, temporary mail.
Sorry to start the next video.
Nope.
So for the sake of time. So this is just delete me. Remember that quote I said about the best time to plant a tree is now, or best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, then the second best time is now? A lot of your information's already out there. So now what do? You've made progress. You're trying to make sure your data is not scooped up by advertising agencies. It's not being potentially used to profile you. Just Delete Me has gone through and compiled a list of, hey, here's all the websites that may have your data, and click on them and we'll give you details about how to remove it. And some are easy. Now notice it's a huge list, and I actually scrolled pretty quick, but it's a massive list. That's pretty scary when you think about that on your own. Here's all these companies that your data might be there and you don't know what's there and how they're using it. So they'll give you some examples. So some of them are easy or impossible. Barnes & Noble, you can't delete your data. They basically say they own it. Great.
But at least now you know.
Now you know.
Not to do business with Barnes & Noble.
Avast is easy. Log into the website, say delete account, it's gone. Then you've got some that are in between there, and I think it's Battle.net we use the example for the gamers. You have to send a signed, authorized legal identification to their regional headquarters. I think you have to send it by official carrier pigeon, chiseled in stone, with a blood sample, and then they're like, okay, no more Warcraft for you, or whatever. All right, fine. So that's it. That's everything. If you go through and basically do those pieces, you're going to be better off than most people out there. So, Jack, why don't I take the first three and you send it home with the last two there?
Sure.
So, security, no security is perfect. Take that away. Nothing is perfect. Times change. Your tools should too. Always review your tools. Reduce what people know about you. Don't make your life an open book online.
You have a right to privacy. Use it. Use these tools. Pitch this to your friends. The more people don't leverage the rights that they have, the easier it is to take them away. And consult with a lawyer. Like you mentioned before, if you think you need a lawyer, you probably need a lawyer. Go talk to a lawyer. We're not lawyers. Have a nice day.
So thank you. Thank you, everyone here. Thank you, Full Sail. Yeah, let's do questions.
She said we had till 3:30. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. So a lot of great information. So we have about 5 minutes or so to do some Q&A. If you guys have questions in the audience here, make sure to raise your hands. They'll bring a microphone to you. If you're online, communicate with the online moderator, and they'll be able to help you out as well. So, all right.
Got a few questions.
Okay. Let's see. Go ahead.
I had a question. Are these slides available for us to look over them so that way we know where to go and whatnot?
Yeah, we'll make the slides available. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I don't know if Full Sail has a publishing mechanism for Hall of Fame.
But I know the video will be up. If we can make the slides available, we're completely cool with that.
So we'll probably also the Twitter handle fell at Fourth as a Service. We've done one of these at UCF. That was a larger workshop. We're here now. We'll put the slides on SlideShare there as well.
I guess next.
All right, there we go.
All right, so I have WebRoot antivirus. Would you guys say that's a good one? Have you heard anything negative or positive about it? Should I keep it or should I move on to something different?
I don't really either, to be honest. So I've heard of it actually. I don't have any experience with it.
All right.
So really, to Jack's point, the fact that you're doing anything is probably better than nothing. But some of the ones that we listed up there, Avast, AVG, any of the paid tools like McAfee, et cetera, are probably going to treat you right. I'll tell you personally, I use Avast. That's what I use. But I also use Defense in Depth. So if you're using AV, make sure you're using a lot of the other tools that we showed you. Make sure you're doing your patches and updates. Make sure you're doing all that. Because then if the AV fails, well, you're probably secure in these other ways. You're patched, you're up to date, et cetera.
All right, thank you.
If I'm on Windows or if it's my mom's machine, I use Windows Defender. And if it's a Mac, Avast has been pretty good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Online question.
Yes, online question from Vanessa. She's in the Internet Marketing Program.
Hi, Vanessa.
And she had
She probably loves this.
any recommendation on what to use on a PC that may have been compromised or any way to find out if it is too as well? So it's kind of a two-part question.
It is.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how she thinks she got compromised. What's that?
You're in my head.
I know.
So let's answer it two ways. Do you think the computer's been compromised in that you think you have a virus, et cetera, or do you think you're being monitored? So I'll take the compromised updates. You take the compromised being monitored.
Yep.
So if you think that you've got a virus or something like that, the best thing you can do legitimately is the word I'm looking for is burn it down. And by what I mean by that is is reinstall the OS. So mind you, that's not always an option, which is why we talk about backups and knowing where your data goes. If you've got effective backups and your images are backed up and your documents are backed up, whether you're using like a Google Drive or iCloud, et cetera, erasing that operating system and rebuilding from the ground up is really going to be your safest option. However, there are tools available. Stinger is a boot up antivirus tool. There's a number of boot up tools. If you've got one of my suggestions would be is if you think you've got a problem like that and you've got a Mac, maybe go to the Apple Store, have them look at it, see if they can work with you to get that re-imaged. If you're
also a Full Sail student.
Yeah, I was about to say Full Sail student. Call the help desk. Talk to the help desk.
Go talk to the help desk. Have them burn your computer down. Back up your stuff.
Yeah.
As far as monitoring, it kind of goes back to it depends on how it's hooked into your system, but I mean, VPN can prevent a lot of the monitoring, but it really depends on where they're at. If they're installed at a system level, which is really, really low level, your probably best bet is to burn it to the ground. Back up the stuff that's important to you and burn it down. The way I use my computer, I keep very little information on my actual machine. I'll use things like Google Drive or other means to where if I get to a situation where things seem to be running slow, I'm trying a bunch of new applications. I'll burn it down and reinstall everything with a clean image.
All right. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah. Good luck.
Okay.
Hello.
Sure.
So I have two quick questions.
Okay.
First is, so when you delete something, like when you delete like a search history or when you delete some of your emails, do they like are they being deleted from this world whatsoever, or are they still being stored somewhere, like in a Google database, some huge database where Google keeps these deleted emails? And my second question is, like today we all hear lots of this exciting news that people say with big smiles from many fancy science centers that like, oh, soon by 2050 we all be injected with chips in our heads, and we'll be able to translate our thoughts to each other, and we'll be able to do all kinds of cool stuff with these chips in our brains. What's your opinion of as professionals? Is it a good idea, and what most importantly, will it be required to have a chip in your head?
Okay. Well, first off, let's start here.
Yeah.
I love your question.
I love you.
So
We
let's
tackle the first one.
Yeah, you take the first one. I want to take the second one.
Yeah, I kind
I
of
want to
want
take
to
that. Well, we can do both.
So the first one, no. Forensics is a thing. Computer forensics is a thing, and it's amazing the amount of data that they can find. Although, as we mentioned before, there is no perfect security. The goal is to not be the lowest hanging fruit. It goes back to that old saying, I don't need to be faster than you, or I don't need to be faster than the bear. I just got to be faster than you.
Correct.
And so, no, your data could probably still be, Google may have it archived somewhere. It also very much depends on the service. You know, we were showing you Just Delete Me. Barnes & Noble, no, can't touch that data. Avast, sure, they'll burn it down. Depends on, so you got to have an understanding of kind of what you're installing and using.
Right.
On your hard drive itself, yes, you can reformat. There are tools that if you reformat your hard drive and it writes zeros to every sector 7 times in a row. I used to be in the defense world, and that was things we had to do, and nuke hard drives and stuff like that in order to truly burn data down. But you probably don't need to do that if you're being above the law for the most part.
Another one too, if you're worried about emails, Gmail, I mean, they're making their money off of mining your data. So they have a real good reason to keep that data and just say, no, we'll protect it. You can actually request that Google erase that data, and there's some very interesting things going on in Europe called the right to be forgotten. And basically, it's a requirement saying you have to remove all this data. So I would definitely go look at what's going on in Europe, because that's going to be kind of the litmus test for that question. As for your second question, no, I do not believe we're going to be required to have any sort of wetware type implants.
You have a right to choose whether you want a chip put in your head.
That's right. You can choose either the blue or the green one.
Yeah.
So
the wrestle goes back to the convenience versus security.
Right.
It's been the age-old issue.
So, but to your point though, to look at that a little deeper, there's a number of issues with bioethics and ethicists looking at what does it mean when we start to truly integrate technology with our biology. So there's a lot of interesting discussions going on. There's a few books by, I think it's Ray Kurzweil, Spiritual Machines, that deals with AI and the philosophy and ethics behind it. So if you are interested in what that would mean, I would highly encourage looking at Spiritual Machines. I would highly look at technology ethicists in those fields, what they think. Because in the end, there's going to be that ability. I have a good friend who, if he ends up watching this, Eric, who always said, man, as soon as I can get that chip to plug into the internet, I'm in. And I'm like, ain't happening. Like, it's not, that's not for me. So yeah, I'd highly suggest you take a look at those books on ethics.
Another good book is Super Intelligence by Nick Bostrom. He kind of wrote the Do We Live in a Simulation book as well, but it's long and it's boring, but it's a lot of really good information in there. He's a smart dude.
Cool. I think we got one more.
I think we have time for one final question.
My name is Chanel Chambers. Thank you for coming today. My question is very simple. Had a Google or a Gmail account, was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Luckily, following my instinct, I went through like the settings of my computer to see my devices in the current locations and to kind of check out the history of my device, and I saw that it had been logged in Fort Lauderdale in different areas that I wasn't in. So now what I do is I have to change my password often. And I just saw on your slide, don't necessarily change your password often, have a strong password.
No, absolutely change your password often.
Okay, so change it.
No, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, and then the key is to make sure that password is unique from any other account. But yes, changing your password often is a great procedure. I would also look seriously into two-factor authentication that sends to your phone, so people won't be able to get in. Now, the issue is if they've added a device, they may have been doing that to mitigate kind of the two-factor auth. If they've set up, it might be something worth looking into, is to make sure two-factor authentication hasn't already been set up for your account to see if they're using that as the second factor to log in.
That's basically two-factor, if you're not familiar, is when you get the text messages with the code. Try and use Google makes an app called Google Authenticator. You put it on the phone. That's a better way to do it. But it's just you enter your password and then a code. You can also do things like that with geofencing, where you say, I'm only ever here. Then log me in. So look into those two pieces.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, thank you. Well, this wraps up our presentation for today. I want to ask you to thank Ian and Jack for coming and giving us a lot of valuable information. So,
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.